Years ago, on this night, Mitzvah Shabbos of Parshas Shmois, Chav Dalet Tevis, the 24th day of the Hebrew month of Tevis, the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Schnuer Zalman of Liadi, the man who revolutionized the landscape of Jewish thought, synthesizing the rational, the legalistic, and the mystical streams of Torah into a unified, comprehensive program for life known as Hasidus Chabad, returned his soul to its maker. A few months earlier, in July of 1812, precisely Yud Beis Tammuz Tovkuf Ayin Beis in the Hebrew calendar, the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Russia, thus triggered the ferocious and bloody war between France and Russia of 1812. The Alter Rebbe, who was a great opponent of Napoleon, did not want to be under his dominion and rule even for a single day, and he immediately decided to escape Liadi, where he lived, which is at the border of Belarus, which was close to the border where Napoleon invaded. And a few weeks before Rosh Hashanah of 1812, the Alter Rebbe and his family escaped and fled, and for many months they wandered. A fascinating story in and of itself, because their wanderings, their fleeing, their running paralleled the path of the war. And the Alter Rebbe escaped from Belarus into Russia, and ultimately, after months, ended up in a little town in the Kursk area known as Piena, a little town called Piena. On Tuesday, the 19th of Tevis, Yutas Tevis, the Alter Rebbe fell ill. And a few days later, Mitzvah Shabbos, Parshas Shmois, Chav Dalet Tevis, he passed away. His grandson, the Rebbe de Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was present during his passing, writes that it occurred Kachatzois Shah Yud Aleph, which means approximately 10:30 p.m. Not exactly 10:30, but a little before 10:30. Around 10:25 p.m., which, according to our calculations today, it was around 4 hours after Shabbos ended. His children describe in the introduction to his Shulchan Aruch how that night the Rebbe David Ma'ariv made Havdalah, b'dveikus neflo b'dei tzlula, with tremendous ecstasy and oneness with God and with a very lucid and clear mind. Following which he returned his soul to its maker and was interred the next day or the following day in the Jewish cemetery in the Ukrainian city of Hadich, where many still go every year, especially Chav Dalet Tevis, the yahrzeit of the Alter Rebbe, to pray at the holy resting place of Rabbi Schneer Zalman of Liadi. Exactly 50 years ago, at the 150th anniversary of the passing of the Alter Rebbe, Chav Dalet Tevis Tavshin Chav Gimel, 1962. The Kviyas, the calendar then was like this year, like the original year of the Alter Rebbe's passing, where Chav Dalet Tevis is Mitzvah Shabbos. Shabbos is the 23rd of Tevis, and Sunday is the 24th of Tevis. The Alter Rebbe passed away on Mitzvah Shabbos a few hours after Shabbos ended. At 10:25 p.m., 50 years ago, at 10:25 p.m., the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the 7th Lubavitcher Rebbe, suddenly, appeared downstairs in the main shul of 770 Eastern Parkway, the Chabad headquarters, and sat down for a farbrengen, for a gathering. This was very unusual. The Rebbe would usually come into a farbrengen 8:30 p.m. or in later years 9:30 p.m. But 10:25 p.m. this was unusual. But there were those few who understood that this was the exact time when the Alter Rebbe returned his neshama, his soul, to Hashem. I wasn't born yet at the time, but I heard from a few people who were present. The Rebbe's face was unbelievably serious. And sat down, and this is how he opened the farbrengen. He said, in the name of his father-in-law, the name of his father, the Rebbe Rashab, on the yard site of a tzaddik, the tzaddik is ma'oire rachamim. The tzaddik arouses divine compassion on all of the Hasidim, their wives and their children. However, when Hasidim come together on the day of the yahrzeit to study the teachings, to study the Torah of the person whose yahrzeit it is, together with unity and a farbrengen in a gathering, so this generates a greater flow of blessing and compassion, where the tzaddik, the Bala Ilula, generates and arouses even greater compassion on each one of them. By coming together to study his Torah, the Rebbe said, this is our way of giving a pidyon nefesh to the Alter Rebbe. How do we give him a pidyon? A kvittel? By coming together on his yahrzeit to study and to connect and to unite and to inspire and strengthen each other. This is the kvittel that we give him. And immediately the Rebbe instructed that they sing the song of Avinu Malkeinu, one of the Alter Rebbe's legendary songs which he composed. And the crowd sung it with incredible emotion. Right after Avinu Malkeinu, the Rebbe instructed that they sing the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, the famous melody of 4 stanzas, the great melody of the Alter Rebbe, in which he encapsulated and placed his great ideas of Chassidus Chabad, known as the Alter Rebbe's Nigun. Usually it's sung with a preparation, a melody before it. But then the Rebbe said right away to sing the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, and this song was sung as well with extraordinary ecstasy and emotion. And right after the Nigun of the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe began a Maamar. He began saying a discourse. But it wasn't just any discourse. It was one of those brief, fiery, passionate discourses that the Alter Rebbe said in the earlier years. Later, he said more elaborate, developed Maamarim discourses. But in the earlier years, they were called Maamarim Ktsarim. And the Rebbe reviewed one of those Maamarim, quoting the statement of the Talmud, Ein Meistrin Razei Torah el Misha Doyeg Bekir el Misha Libay Doyeg Bekir. Our sages tell us in Masechta Chagiga that we don't give over secrets of Torah only somebody whose heart is sick with love. It was a very brief Maamar, but the Rebbe's voice was from a different world, completely from a different world. Even today, you hear the recording, you can sense it. And then there were another few talks, another few sichos. During that farbrengen Mitzay Shabbos, 50 years ago, on the 150th anniversary since the Alter Rebbe's passing. This is what inspired us to dedicate tonight and tomorrow, the 24th of Teves, the Alter Rebbe's 200th yahrzeit, to spend a full day with the Alter Rebbe, learning his teachings, delving into his Torah, internalizing his thoughts, and applying them to our lives. So we're going to begin with learning, with reviewing a Maamar, a discourse of the Alter Rebbe. Following that, the next shir is going to be given by Rabbi tonight, by Rabbi Reuven Wolf from Los Angeles, who's going to discuss the Alter Rebbe's contribution to the concept of divine providence. The Alter Rebbe's view on how to deal with people who hurt you. Who are you to blame? Following that, we will show a lecture I gave just a few weeks ago to Jewish students at Yale University about the teachings of the Alter Rebbe of Hasidus Chabad. And then tomorrow, throughout the entire day, here at the yeshiva.net, there will be lectures and classes and live webcasts in the Alter Rebbe's teachings. Tomorrow morning we'll begin with learning Mishnayos. I'll be giving a class in Mishnayos, Brachas, chapter 7, Perek Zayin, which begins with the letter Shin, Schnuer. That will be followed by a lecture by Rabbi Ben-Sion Krasnyansky from the Upper East Side of Manhattan, who will discuss 4 revolutionary ideas of the Tanya, among many, but 4 revolutionary ideas of the Tanya, which will be followed by a lecture, by a class by Rabbi Yossi Paltiel about one of the great contributions of the Alter Rebbe to Kabbalah and Jewish philosophy, analyzing the Alter Rebbe's novel idea about Oir, about divine light, divine energy, and its ramifications in the life of the Jew. Following that, we turn to Miami for a live webcast with the Klerman Mesifta, the high school and the yeshiva of Lubavitch in Miami Beach. Rabbi Eli Smith, a teacher there and a dayan in the Besdin of South Miami, will be delivering a PowerPoint presentation about the development of halacha throughout the ages till the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. I will be sharing with the students there a few stories about the Alter Rebbe, and Rabbi Leibel Shapiro will teach the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch and show the novel approach of the Alter Rebbe in halacha, following which we will learn an idea of hashkafa and chasidus from the Alter Rebbe's teachings. And then we have 3 classes, in-depth classes on the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. Rabbi Levi Garelik will discuss the Alter Rebbe's contribution to the concept of Shabbos and Shabbos Agadol. Rabbi Levi Weinberg will discuss the Alter Rebbe's novel idea in Amir L'Nochri, when you have a Gentile working for you on Shabbos, dealing with the question of Shabbos is objective or subjective. And finally, Rabbi Yisrael Rubin from Albany, New York, will be dealing with the Alter Rebbe's view on Bereishis HaTorah, the blessing we recite every morning before we study Torah, and his opinion that when we think Torah, you don't have to make a blessing for that. This will be tomorrow evening, and that will end the part of the program. That will end the program here on the yeshiva.net. I welcome all of you who are here globally from around the world. I hope you tune in tonight, you tune in tomorrow, for all of it, or for some of it, or for part of it, to study the Torah, the extraordinary Torah, the life-transforming Torah of the Baal HaYelula of the Alter Rebbe. We will begin tonight's program of learning and inspiration with reviewing a Maamar, a discourse that was said by the Alter Rebbe, and it's published in his work Torah Or on Parshas Bereishis. As is customary when we review a Hasidic discourse, like by a bar mitzvah and other occasions, that a song precedes it in order to get us into the mental state and the proper consciousness to listen and absorb and internalize the messages, the truths conveyed in this discourse of Chassidus. Loi toiv Heyos HaAdam Levado es Eloi ezer kenegdoi. The Torah says in the beginning of Parshas Bereishis, the beginning of the Torah, that after Hashem created Adam, Hashem said, it's not good for man to be alone. Let me create for him a helper against him. Which the obvious question here is, there is a blatant contradiction. If the woman is a helpmate for the man, so she's not against him. And if she's against him, then she's not a helper. Why does the Torah say, why does Hashem say that it's not good for man to be alone? And therefore he went and he created the whole surgery which ultimately created Chava, Adam's wife. And Hashem says, I want to make a help against him. Either she's a helpmate or she's against him. The explanation is, the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Ki shemesh u'magen Hashem Elokim. Ki shemesh u'magen havaya Elokim literally means that God, the Lord, is both a sun and a shield. He is the sun, he is the source of light, and he's also our protection, our shield. However, if we read the verse carefully, David HaMelech employs here two names of God. The name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and the name of Elokim, and he says, Ki shemesh u'magen havaya Elokim, that the name of Hashem and the name of Elokim are a sun and a shield. And the explanation is that it's actually referring to two separate things. There is the sun, and then there is the shield. And these are the two names, Havaya and Elokim. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is the sun, and Elokim is the shield. Meaning of this is, the name of Hashem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei represents his power to create. Because the word Yud-Hei Vav-Hei comes from the word Haiva, or Yahava. He creates, he brings into being. So the name Havaya represents a reflection of divine energy and an expression of divine energy which becomes a source for the creation of the worlds. However, if this divine light would have been expressed in a conspicuous way when it created all of the worlds and it created all of existence, then there would never be created beings in the way that they are now, because the way that we are now, that we have an independent ego. And we feel ourselves as independent creatures divorced from Hashem. If the divine energy creating the worlds would have been revealed and expressed, there's no possibility that any creature would feel egotistical and self-contained and not part of Hashem, because all of us would have been in a state of bittul b'metzias, which means we would have experienced ourselves only as a continuum of Hashem's reality. Because the truth is that kula kamei keloi chashivi. How does Hashem look at the world from his perspective? From his perspective, the world is not a separate, independent thing. The whole world doesn't have value in his presence. The whole world is it's his energy. It's part of his light. Kula kamei keloi mamash chashivi. It doesn't have a separate identity. The world is simply a little glimmer of his power, a little result of his creative energy. So if the light that creates the worlds would have been revealed and conspicuous, so then we would have experienced ourselves the way Hashem experiences us, the way God experiences the world. We would have never felt ourselves as a yesh, as a separate identity. And because of that, Hashem creates a shield, a nartek, a sheath, to cover up the sun, just like the sun has a sheath and a shield that covers it up, and it dilutes its intensity because its light and its warmth is so intense. So Hashem made a shield on the sun of Shem Havaya, of the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is the creative power. He put a shield on it, and this is the name of Elokim. The name of Elokim represents God's power to conceal and eclipse the intense light and radiance of the divine, so that it gives room for the emergence of a world that is self-contained and self-oriented, of a world that has an ego, and of people and of creatures that feel themselves as an identity completely separate from God. And that's the name of Elikim, which the word Elikim means a ruler. Elikim is a ruler, Shirara, because Ein Melech B'Loya. You cannot be a king without a nation, without a people. So because Hashem wanted to be a king, he wanted to be a ruler. He wanted to have a relationship with people who are outside of him. He wanted a relationship with otherness. Therefore, he employs the concept of tzimtzum, the ability to eclipse his creative energy. And this is what the name Elikim represents, which allows for the consciousness of otherness, that we feel ourselves as separate entities divorced from God. Not only that, we may not even feel his existence. And this level, this reality is also called Shechina, which Shechina comes from the words V'shachanti b'soichem, I will dwell among them, because it's through this characteristic that Hashem can enclose himself within created beings. But if there would be no restrictions and no concealments and no shield that would be blocking the light, if the light of the creative energy of the divine would be revealed the way it is in its essence, without any concealment, there would be no way that the created creatures would be able to contain it and absorb it. As created beings, their entire existence would be redefined as they would melt away. In oneness with God, they would forfeit any sense of separateness and ego, in order for there to be Shechina, that he dwells within us and gives us power, while we retain our structure and our psyche and our identity. It's only because the name Elikim, which blocks the name Havaya, so it's like the sun, which goes into the seeth, and the seeth blocks and dilutes and the intensity of the warmth of the sun, and therefore we could contain the light. Now in our sages, in the works of our sages, we have the concept called Golus HaShechina, the exile of the Shechina, which according to the above definition of what Shechina is, we'll be able to understand it. Gemara says at the end of Megillah, Galu le'Edom Shechina imam, Galu le'Bavel Shechina imam. When the Jews were exiled to Edom, the Shechina comes with them. When they exiled to Babylonia, the Shechina comes with them. Wherever the Jewish people went into exile, the Shechina comes with them. Deeper concept here is not just a literal meaning that God accompanies the Jews in exile, but there's also a deeper spiritual meaning. And that is the whole objective of why Hashem communicated his infinite divine energy in the shield of Shem Elikim, which restricts the energy and conceals it and eclipses it, so that we should be able to be created as separate entities that have our own ego. We should feel ourselves as independent creatures. The reason is that Hashem caused us to become a yesh, to become egotistical, because he wanted that we should create bittul hayesh, that we should take our egos and surrender it to the ayin, to the source, to the true source of everything, to the divine. In other words, God suspends himself in order to create us and allow room for our existence, so that we should suspend our existence and create room for his existence. So Hashem concealed his light and he allowed a yesh to emerge, so that the yesh now takes its identity and realigns itself with its true source and with the true essence, which is godliness. And that's the whole reason why he restricted his energy, because he wanted that we should create the bittul hayesh, the nullification of the yesh. Like the Pasuk says, Utzva hashamayim l'cha mishtachavim. The legions of heaven prostrate themselves to you, referring to the angels, all of the heavenly angels like Michal and Gavriel, even though they also have some sense of self, because they're created angels, but nonetheless they prostrate themselves to you, because they recognize that you are their source. So the objective is that also humans, also beings on earth, who feel themselves completely as egotistical, should now take the yesh and realign it with the ayin, with the source of the yesh, with the divine source. And this is the pleasure, this is the nachas ruach, this is what gives Hashem pleasure, that there should be a yesh, there should be a person, and there should be a world that perceives itself as self-contained. And this yesh should now surrender itself. It should challenge itself. It should dedicate itself, and it should realign itself with its source. And this is precisely what God desired with the whole drama of the creation of the world. And for this objective, He allowed His godly energy to descend and travel through many layers of concealments and many layers of hester, of cover-ups, to the point that the yesh, the ego of the world, should emerge, as the Pasuk says in Yeshaya, Koil hanikra b'shmi, v'lechvoidi brasav yitzartev afasisiv. Everything that is called by my name, and for my honor I created and I formed it and I made it, that there should be the bittul hayesh, that we should come to recognize our source. What is the concept of Golus HaShchina, of the exile of the Shchina? When we said that the ray of godliness that gets eclipsed is called Shchina. So when the Shchina comes down and is enclosed in the 70 spiritual ministers that govern the 70 nations to give them life, and they become completely egotistical and independent to the point of saying, lest Pare said, Li, the river is mine and I created myself. And as the Gemara says at the end of the Menachos, that many nations say that God is the God of gods, He's God, but He's the God over gods. So this is the concept of Golus HaShchina. This is where the Shchina goes into exile. Why? Because the Shchina descended into our world to create us, but its objective is not fulfilled. Instead of creating us, so that we should then challenge ourselves and go back to our source, what happens is we actually retain the status quo, so no bittul is achieved from this descent, and this is the exact antithesis of the whole objective of creation, and this is what's called Golus HaShchina, that the Shchina is in exile, meaning the ray of godliness came down. The source of all the worlds lowered itself, that it shouldn't be revealed, and it came down into the lowest levels, known as klippos and chitzonim, the shells and the external levels, and the whole reason was why? So that we should transform our realities, and when that doesn't happen, this energy is truly in exile. It's completely in exile, it's completely eclipsed, and it remains subjugated in a place that's absolutely antithetical to what it is and what it wants. Now the Shechina, the divine presence, that enters into the world in a very eclipsed fashion, is also called Mara. As the Pasuk says about Moshe Rabbeinu, b'Mara Elav Esvada, I appeared to him in a Mara, which the word Mara actually means a mirror. And the reason it's associated with the word Mara, mirror, is because when we take a look at a physical mirror, what's the function of a physical mirror? If you're looking straight in open air, you just see what's ahead of you. Even if you look through a window, so there's glass, but glass is transparent, so it allows you to see through it. It's see-through, or any material that's see-through. The concept of a mirror is that there is a piece of glass, but the glass is not transparent because you cover the glass with a layer of silver, and that layer of silver eclipses the glass, and therefore it stops your vision, and it does not allow your vision to extend beyond the glass. But what happens is, because your vision is stopped, it's obstructed by the layer of silver that obstructs the glass. So what happens is the light of the vision bounces back, what's called Or Chayzer, the light that returns. There's two types of energy. There's Or Yashar, direct energy, and Or Chayzer, the light that bounces off and comes back. For example, when somebody throws a ball, so there's the momentum of the ball as a result of the energy that he invested in the throw. But then there's when the ball hits the wall and the ball bounces back with a different type of intensity. That's the concept of Or Chayzer. So when you have a mirror, that the glass is not see-through because it's covered with silver, so a person is looking at it. So what happens is the light, the vision, is obstructed by the silver, so it bounces back and it allows him to see himself and that which is behind him, which is what a mirror does. If there would be glass, you would see straight, you would see what is ahead of you, but you can't see yourself, and certainly you can't see what's behind you and above you. Because the glass is covered by silver, so that creates an Or Chayzer, a light that bounces back, that your vision now goes back and you could see yourself and you could see that which is behind you, which you could have never done without it. However, the condition is that the glass has to be covered with a thin layer of silver, which is thin, and it allows you then to see not what's ahead of you, but to see what's behind you, what's above you, what precedes you, what's before you, not what's lower and ahead of you. However, if you take the glass and you eclipse it with a very dense or thick covering, like a wall or cement or concrete, etc., then you see nothing. You certainly don't see what's ahead of you and you don't see what's behind you. This is all a metaphor for the whole spiritual dynamic of existence. And that is that the name Havaya is like a sun, and it radiates tremendous light, and it comes down with its full intensity of divine energy to create the world. That's what creates the world. And then you have the name of Elikim, which represents Hashem's Malchus, Hashem's quality of rulership, of being a king, which requires there to be a nation that's separate from him. And therefore Shem Elikim obstructs the flow of Shem Havaya. It creates a tzimtzum, it creates restrictions, it creates concealments. And in those concealments, the divine energy of Havaya becomes concealed, so that it doesn't extend any further. It doesn't get revealed, it's blocked. The light is blocked. And this blockage happens, so to speak, in the entry to the worlds. Every world is a different blockage until it hits this world where there's a much thicker blockage, and the light comes and it's blocked and it doesn't go through, and therefore we don't feel the light because there's a blockage. It's not like a window of glass which allows the light to come through, but there's a blockage that blocks the light of Hashem, and therefore the world does not experience His presence, and the world does not experience His infinity, and therefore we don't feel ourselves as He sees us. We don't view ourselves from His perspective, we view ourselves from our perspective. And this is like the concept of the blockage of the mirror, which doesn't allow the light to extend. However, the value of this is just like by a mirror. The light doesn't extend this way, but because the light of your eyes and your vision bounces back, it creates an Or Chayzer, a light that returns, which allows you to see yourself and allows you to see even that which is behind you. So this is also what happens in the story of existence, that the ray of Shem Havaya comes down, and Elikim blocks it like the mirror, but this creates this tension and this collision between the light of the divine and the blockage, creates an Or Chayzer. It creates a new momentum, a new energy, because the light that bounces back is far more intense and far stronger than the light that travels directly to its destination. Because the light that bounces back and it carries the momentum from the opposition, so the opposition, the blockage, creates a momentum and creates an intensity, and it becomes a catalyst and a springboard for a greater light and for a deeper light and for more intense light. And that's why physically, as a result of the mirror, you can see yourself the way you never saw yourself before, and you could see that which is above you, that which is behind you, which spiritually, psychologically represents that which is deeper than you and above you. And that's what the Pasuk says, Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila, and that the woman of valor becomes the crown of her husband. The light of the sun will be like the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun, just like the mirror, as a result of the blockage, which blocks the extension of light. So there's a new light that returns and allows you to see behind you a very far distance. The same is true spiritually. When Shem Havaya hits Shem Elikim and gets blocked, it creates a new light that allows you to go to much deeper places and allows you to have even greater vision. Because as a result of the concealment of Shem Havaya, a new momentum and a new energy is unleashed, and it allows a person to experience the reality of truth even in a deeper way than without the blockage. This is the deeper meaning of what the Gemara says in Ksuvos, Daf Samach. On the pasuk, V'hi b'ulas Baal Baliyos Shal Baal Oiloi Mayveni Yeredesimai. The Gemara says that when the b'ulas Baal, that she, the woman, goes up together with the husband, but she doesn't go down together with the husband. Meaning, if his standards are higher than hers as far as living expenses and living conditions, he can say to her these are not your standards, and therefore I'm not going to support you on this level. No. He has to support her according to his standards, but it doesn't work the other way, meaning if his standards are degraded for whatever reason, but her standards are higher, he cannot demand from her to go down with him. If she goes up with him, she never goes down with him. She always goes up. She cannot go down with him. If he's up, she goes up with him, and if he's down, it's not her level, she's on a higher level, she stays up. Which this is legally, halachically, and in the fashion of how a marriage takes place according to Jewish law. Spiritually, it means that we have the two forces. The man and the woman represents Havaya and Elikim. So we say that she goes up with him, and she doesn't go down with him. Havaya goes down. Havaya goes down. But the Elikim doesn't go down with him, because if she would go down with him, that would be already Golus HaShchina. His job, Havaya, is to go down. The job of Elikim is now to go up. In other words, to create the blockage, which creates the frustration, which allows now the light to go back up, to bounce back up in a person's life. The fact that we have concealments and obstacles and challenges, and there's no clarity and there's no transparency of the divine light, because the divine light is blocked by the human body and by the crudeness of the human body, which this is all as a result of Shem Elikim. We don't go down with it. On the contrary, for us, this is supposed to create the tension and the collision that becomes a catalyst and a springboard for a much deeper awareness and a much deeper clarity and a much deeper vision. This is the meaning of the pasuk in Shir Hashir. That the groom talks about the beautiful bride and says, my dove is b'chag v'asel in the clefts of the rock, in the hidden steps. My dove is hiding, and the groom pleads and says, Hareini esmarayich hashmini es koilechi koilech harif. Umarich nava, show me your countenance. Let me hear your voice, because your voice is sweet and your countenance is beautiful. But the word that's used is Hareini esmarayich. Show me your mirror. That's the word that's used. Because we're talking about the fact that a neshama comes into a body, and the body completely eclipses the presence of the soul. That the person does not feel his inner purity and his inner holiness and his inner godliness and his inner majesty and his inner nobility. The physical crude body completely eclipses and overwhelms and consumes and traps and imprisons the soul, and it gets blocked. So on this, Hashem tells the soul, Hareini esmarayich, show me the mirror. The whole reason that there's a blockage is you read the tzarech aliyah. The blockage is simply that the soul and the inner energy of the person should go up, milmata lamayla, or chayzer, that from the collision, from the fact that it hits and it confronts an opposition, it should go back to be re-included in the divine light in yet a deeper and a higher fashion. This is the meaning of what the pasuk says in Bereishis. Vayas Hashem Elokim la'adam u'le'ishtay kasnas arvay al bishem. That Hashem Elokim, using both names, made for Adam and his wife kasnas ar, leather shirts, leather clothes, and he dressed them. In other words, he created a dress, a garment that eclipses, because that's what a garment does. A garment eclipses a person's body. So Hashem makes for Adam and his wife kasnas ar. We all have garments that eclipse our inner energy, but the point is that as a result of the striking against the garment that eclipses us, we have the Or Chayzer, the light that bounces back and goes up from the fact that it hit the bottom, and now it goes back up, and this creates a whole new light and a whole new energy, and this is the deeper meaning of Loi Toive Yoisa Adam Levado. Hashem says it's not good for a man to be alone. Let me make a help against him. The spiritual meaning of this is Heyos HaAdam Levado is HaAdam. Who's HaAdam? HaAdam is Adam HaElyon, the supernal man. As the pasuk says in Yecheskel, there's Adam HaElyon Sha'al HaKisei. There's the Kisei HaKavod, the throne, and on top of the throne there's Adam HaElyon, the higher man, the divine persona, which is of course the source of man down here below. This is called Adam HaElyon Al HaKisei Dmus Kamari Adam. Naturally, this Adam is Levado. This Adam is alone. Einoid Mulvado. There's nothing but Hashem. this Adam is Levado. He's alone and there's nothing else, because there's no reality outside of Hashem. The only existence and the only true reality is God, and outside of Him there's nothing else. Einoid Mulvadoi. And this is the way it should have been, that the divine presence and energy should be revealed and expressed, and it's obvious that there's nothing outside of Him. And even if He creates a world, it's obvious that the whole world is completely one with Him and part of Him and just a reflection of Him and a continuation of Him, just like it is from His perspective. What we call Yichudi Allah, the higher level of unity. When you look at the cosmos from the divine perspective, you don't see a separate being and a separate ego. You see it from a divine perspective. And divinity is everywhere, and it includes everything, and everything is part of His reality and submerged in His reality, and there's nothing outside of it. There's nothing that occupies its own space. So naturally it should have been Heyos HaAdam Levado. HaAdam, the Adam HaElyon, should have been alone, Einoid Levado, and the whole world completely one and nullified within Him as part of His reality. This comes Hashem and says, Loi Toiva Yos Adam Levado, although this is the natural state. It's not good for Adam Elyon to be Levado. Eseloi Ezer, I'm going to help myself. I'm going to help the Adam. How kinegdoi? By creating an opposition. Because sometimes the greatest help you can give the Adam is by creating a force that opposes him. The fact that there is a force that opposes him and challenges him, this becomes the greatest help for him. And this is what he says, that the greatest help for Havaya, for Adam, is from Kenegde, from the opposition. The fact that there's a tzimtzum, there's a restriction. And there are many layers of concealment that completely cover up and eclipse and conceal the divine energy and do not allow the pure revelation of divine energy, which this is what allows for the creation of the body. And this is what allows for the creation of the animal soul, who are in a state of yesh, of egotism, and completely separate, because the body feels itself as a material, narcissistic, self-contained being. The animal consciousness that exists within every single one of us is like a beast. It's focused completely on self-preservation and self-gratification, and all of its life is about self-fulfillment, and it's a self-oriented creature, it's a self-contained creature, and that's how we feel ourselves. We feel ourselves in our animal consciousness as completely focused on self-preservation. This comes only because the divine energy that's infusing life into the body and into the animal soul is concealed. On this, Hashem says, Eseloi Ezer Kenegdoi, from this opposition, from this concealment that opposes the divine light, from this will be the greatest help. Why? Because by this confrontation, and from this collision, and from this obstacle, we create the mirror, the Mara, Hareini Es Marayach, the Oir Chayzer, the new light that is created from the tension that comes between heaven and earth, and from the tension that comes between soul and body, and from the tension between the spiritual and the physical, and from the tension between the transcendental and the earthly, and the tension that comes between man's inner idealism and man's inner selfishness. And that tension, when it's exploited right, creates the greatest spiritual connection and the greatest spiritual force and the greatest ecstasy, because the light that comes, the chayzer, the light that returns from balancing off, is a much greater light than the light that would just be revealed directly without any opposition. And that's the meaning of the pasuk. That Sarah says, Tzchaik asali elikim, she named her son Yitzchak. Because Elikim made us laugh. The emphasis on the word is Elikim. That the main laughter, the main joy comes from the name Elikim. Because the greatest pleasure and joy and laughter comes from the concealment. When you don't surrender to the concealment, when you don't take the concealment seriously, when you don't become a victim of the concealment, but you see the concealment simply as a springboard, as a catalyst to generate the greatest growth of human potential and spiritual potential. So then, Tzchaik asali Elikim, Elikim makes me laugh like nothing else. Havaya could not generate that joy, that pleasure, that laughter. Elikim is the one that generates that laughter when Elikim doesn't cause galus hashchina. But when we exploit the obstacle to become a springboard for growth, this becomes the greatest tzchaik, and that's why we say that l'asid lavi in the future, this will be the greatest pleasure. Yismach Hashem b'masav. The joy of Hashem comes from the name Elikim, because this allows for a revelation that's even beyond Shem Havaya. This is the Ur Chayzer, as the pasuk says in the Shira, Ad Yaver Amcha Havaya, till your nation passes. It literally means Ad Yaver Amcha Hashem, till your nation of God passes. The spiritual meaning is that Yaver Amcha Hashem, we will pass above the name Havaya through the name Elikim. And this is the concept what the Pasuk says in Yirmiyah about a desert, Asher lo yashav Adam Sham, a place where man has not dwelled, which spiritually means there's a place that's beyond Adam. Adam is Adam Ha'elyon Heyos, Adam Levado Shem Havaya. And there's a place that man does not dwell there, and that's the revelation that happens precisely through Shem Elikim. Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila, through the woman who opposes the husband. Ezer Kenegda, and she becomes the crown of her husband. She brings out the best in her husband. Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila. She brings out the best in him and allows him to reach a level that he could not reach on his own, like it is spiritually that through Elikim, Havaya reaches a much deeper place. In other words, there's a much deeper revelation of godliness than there would have been if there would be no concealment and God would just allow himself to reveal himself without a concealment. And that's why when Adam and Chava are created, they're created in a way of Ezer Kenegdai, that there is an opposition, and that opposition creates the deepest help. After the sin of Adam and Chava, the Pasuk says, Kosnes Oir, that Hashem made for them Kosnes Oir. He made for them tunics of leather, and the spelling is Oir with an ayin. Leather, Oir, fur, the hide of an animal, which is called Oir with an ayin, because this is the difference between before the sin and after the sin. Before the sin, there was also a concealment, because they were created beings, and every created being is a product of concealment. But then the concealment was very thin. It's like when the glass has a layer that covers it, but it's a very, very thin layer. It says, "Vayani Chayil began Eden loved the Lashamri." He was in the Garden of Eden, so the layer was very thin, the concealment was very thin. But after they sinned from the Eitz Hadas, now the Kinegdai became much more intense and much more ferocious and much more serious. There became a much bigger blockage. This is the concept called Klipas Noiga, that there's a shell, there's a husk that blocks the divine energy, and this is called Kosnes Oir, tunics of leather, of the hide of the skin. The connection to Oir is because the main source from which all of the external forces in this world, all the klippos in this world, in other words, all the realities that don't recognize holiness and godliness, so they always receive their nurture through the Oir, through the skin, because they receive their nurture through here, and the main place from where the hair grows is on the skin. Like the Mishnah says by Paraduma. The skin has its little holes from which the hair grows, like it says by Paraduma, that if there were two hairs in one source, in one hole, it disqualifies the red heifer. And in the Sechta Chulin and Perik, we talk about Nekev Sheinad Yoyover Olav, hole on which the ink does not pass, and therefore the Kosnes Oir represents a strong concealment, a strong blockage from where it grows here, from where the klippos receive their nurture, their energy, because the light is blocked very strongly, and this happens after Adam and Chava eat from the tree of knowledge. And that's why all of Hashem's service is called Avodas Hashem, serving Hashem. What does the word Avodah mean? The word Avodah means work, service, but particularly it comes from the word Ibud Oiris, which is a very difficult labor of tanning. When you take the skin of an animal, the fur of an animal, and you want to make it into leather, it's an excruciating work of taking the skin of the animal and turning it into leather that can be used. This is called Ibud Oiris, working out the leather. And this is what the function of a person is, to be an Oved Elikim. What does it mean, an Oved Elikim? Why do we call it Oved Elikim? You have to work with Elikim to fix the concealment of Elikim, to fix the concealment of the Oir, which comes from Shem Elikim, because Elikim represents God's ability to block and conceal his energy. And that allows for there to be the skin, that covers up Adam and Chava and covers up the energy, and it allows for here, which here has very little energy, which is why when you cut here, there's no pain because there's no nerves in here. So it's not painful to cut here because there's no energy and there's no real life source. It's not like cutting, God forbid, a piece of skin or another limb. And this represents that the divine energy that comes through here is very restricted, it's very minute, and that's why there can be klippas, there can be shells, there can be husks, there can be chitzanim that don't feel the divine presence. Why don't they feel the divine presence? Because there's complete concealment to a level of here. What's an Oved Elokim? You work with the hide, you work with the skin, you work with the concealment, you work with it. In other words, you realize that it's only a concealment that's there to be exploited in order to make you grow much more, because really the only reality is divine energy, and everything is holy and everything is part of divine energy. There's just a concealment, and the whole reason of the concealment is Har'eni es marayich, show me your true colors, show me your true depth through the mirror. And this is what an Oved Elokim is. You work with the hide, which comes from Shem Elokim, to transform darkness into light. And that's why it says Vayas Hashem Elokim la'adam u'le'ishtay. Suddenly both names are used, Hashem and Elokim, because the whole concept of kasnas oir, of garments that eclipse the inner energy, comes from the combination of Hashem and Elokim. And the two names also relate to the fact that it's Adam and Chava, man and his wife, Ezer Kenegda, which these are the two names of Havaya and Elokim. And this explains what the Medrash says, and it's brought in Kabbalah, that Chanoich, the great tzaddik Chanoich, was toifer minolim. He used to make shoes. He was a person who sewed shoes. Which apparently, what does this mean? But now we understand the concept. What does it mean he sewed shoes? He was a toifer minolim. What it means is that the shoe, which comes from leather, represents the concealment. The oil represents the concealment. And since Adam and Chava were dressed with kasnas oil, what does it mean, kasnas oil? That they were given this concealment, especially after the sin. So Chanoich, his job was toifer minolim, meaning after the oil, after the leather is fixed and repaired through the kasnas oil of Adam and Chava, so Chanoich turned them into shoes. Which is what Chanoich was known as a tzaddik. In other words, Chanoich took it and he turned it into something that serves a productive purpose. He took the oil and he worked it out to the point that it became a shoe, which is the concept of an Oved Elokim. But even if Adam would have not sinned, and therefore there would have not been klipas noiga, he would have not worn kasnas or with an ayin. He would have had kasnas or with an aleph, as the Medrash says that in the Sefer Torah of Reb Meir. They found kasnas or with an aleph, tunics of light, not tunics of leather. So there wouldn't have been klipas noiga. Still, there would be an ezer kenegdai, because ezer kenegdai is before they sinned. But the kenegdai would have been much more subtle, much more refined. There would have been an opposition, but much more refined. What would have been the opposition? The fact that between every single world that Hashem creates, in the many series of spiritual worlds that He creates, there's something called a parsa. A parsa means a partition. Between one world and another world is a partition. Just like when you have light in one room that comes in from the sun. And then you have a curtain. So the light that goes through the curtain and comes to the other side of the curtain is already a very different quality of light, because it went through the partition. Between each world is a parsa, there's a partition, which dilutes and alters the state of divine energy, so that the consciousness in the lower world is completely different than the consciousness in the higher world. In the higher world is much more awareness of the divine presence, but before it goes into the next world, it goes through a parsa. It goes through a spiritual partition, a spiritual curtain, which alters the divine energy, so that the product of the next world is a different product. The consciousness is different, and therefore the creations of the next world are different. And this is the series of all the worlds in Kabbalah and Chassidus. Between each world is a parsa, a partition that blocks the world. And the same is true by a person, just like a person also has that partition which is called the diaphragm, the chatzar hakaved, which separates the higher part of the person and the lower part of the person, because the unique qualities that make us human, our mind and our heart and our higher senses, are always above the partition. And the partition creates a paradigm shift, that which is below the partition is not of the same essence and of the same caliber of the faculties that are above the diaphragm. This is because spiritually this is the way Hashem creates all the worlds, because everything in the biological structure of a person evolves from the spiritual system of the cosmos, because the human being is a microcosm which contains the whole world. So that which is in the world is also reflected in every person. There's a diaphragm in each, between each world, which causes the light of the lower world to be of a different essence and a different caliber and a different quality, which makes it a different world with a different level of sensitivity, which is more numb, which is more weak, which is more dark, lower and lower and lower until we hit the partition that blocks the energy into this physical world, our world, in which godliness is completely eclipsed and almost unnoticed. And the same is true even in holiness. For example, between the world of Atzilus, which is the highest world, and the world of Bria, which are both holy worlds, there's still a major partition. And therefore, even if Adam and Chava would have not sinned, there would have still been the opposition. Ezer Kenegde, but what type of opposition? Not the thick opposition of Klippa, of Klippas Noiga, which is also not the thickest opposition. But Klippas Noiga is still a translucent shell, but it's a husk. There would have been higher forms of concealment, more subtle forms of concealment, but still concealment. And Adam's job would have been to elevate that which goes through the partition. The light gets blocked in the partition, and it creates a new world and elevate it back to its source in the Or Chayzer. And this is what God's intention was when He created the world before Adam sinned. And He said, Ezer Kenegda. Once he sinned, now the Kenegde becomes much stronger, and now the sublimation is much more challenging, but also much more rewarding, because now you have to deal with real klippas. Once they partook from the tree of knowledge in violation of God's will, which the tree of knowledge represents toiv and ra, klippas noiga, where there's a husk that conceals godliness. So now there's a whole new blockage created in our system and created in our world that we have to deal with, and this is the blockage called klippas. And that's why He expelled Adam from Gan Eden after the Eitz Hadas. This wasn't just a punishment of revenge, not at all. Because now Adam's responsibility is he has to go out of paradise and he has to deal with more serious levels of concealments and blockages in order to sublimate it. And in order to bring back the light back to its source and reach even a deeper place. He cannot do this in Gan Eden. So Hashem says now it's time to leave Gan Eden. And yet, even Klippas Noiga is still like a mirror. It's considered a very thin layer, which allows you to see. But sometimes you have a stone, it's not silver anymore, it's stone, now you can't see anything. And this represents not Klippas Noiga, which means a translucent shell, but a husk that's completely opaque, just like you have in different fruits. A fruit has a shell, but sometimes from the shell you could see that there's a fruit inside, and sometimes like by a walnut, there's such a thick shell that you don't even see the fruit inside. And the same is true in our world. There is a blockage that conceals divine energy, but it's called Klippas Noiga, which means it's a translucent shell. But then you have a shell that's so opaque it completely conceals godliness, you can't even extract the light. This is not a mirror anymore. This is when the window is covered up with concrete or cement, and you can't see anything. You can't see ahead of you, and you can't see behind you. This is a whole different experience. Klippas Noiga is a combination of toiv and ra, and this is what gives life to all permissible things. All food that is permissible, all animals that are permissible, all objects and actions that are permissible receive their energy from Klippas Noiga. And that's why it's called mutter, which mutter in Hebrew means untied, and asur means tied, because that which makes something forbidden or permissible, it's not just a state of law, permissible and forbidden. It's a spiritual concept. When something is permissible, it means that this object, even though the divine energy is concealed there, but it can be extracted. It can be revealed. It can be brought back to its source. The inner spirituality can be revealed. When something is forbidden and it's off limits, it's because the divine energy is completely tied. It's usher in the hands of the klippas, and it can't be extracted, and therefore you cannot bring out the good as an Or Chayzer, as a light that returns from the klippa, and therefore it's off limits to the Jew, and we say this act is forbidden and this act is permissible. According to all of this, we'll understand why in the Sheva brachas that we do for chas, we say the blessings that we say for chasanim and kalos, for grooms and brides. So we have the blessing Sameach to Samach Reim Ahuvim, and we finish off the blessing Baruch Atah Hashem Sameach Chasen v'Kala. God brings joy to the Chasen and the Kala. But the last blessing, the bracha, when we talk about the future, etc., we finish off the blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem Mesameach Chosan im hakala. God brings joy to the groom with the bride. What's the difference? The first blessing you say Hashem brings joy to the groom and the bride. The last blessing you say Mesameach Chosan im hakala with the bride. The reason is the kala represents Malchus, the bride represents Chava, represents Shem Elokim, which is the challenge for the masculine energy, like Havai is challenged by Elokim, which blocks it. The same as in a marriage. The Chosin is representing Havaya, and Elokim is represented by the kala, which is Malchus, which blocks the Havaya. Initially, she absorbs and receives all the light from the Chosin, which comes from the masculine world into the feminine world. It comes from the masculine world, from the Chosin into the Kala. And that's why we say Hashem gives joy to Chosin and Kala, first the Chosin and the Kala, because the energy comes from the Chosin and the Chosin gives it to the Kala. But then what happens is Mesameach Chosin im hakala. He gives joy to the Chosin with the Kala. In other words, Mesameach Chosan im hakala, the main joy is the kala, and then the kala brings joy to the chosan. It's not Mesameach Chosan and then chosan the kala, it's Mesameach Chosan im hakala. Once the kala has simcha, now the chosan goes along on the ride. In other words, that through the kala, the chosan becomes joyous. Mesameach Chosan im hakala. This is the simcha that comes to the chosan because he's with the kala. Because since she is kenegdoi, so she creates a true help, and she brings out a whole new light in him that could not be experienced otherwise. Because there's a kenegdoi, it allows him to go to a much deeper place, just as it is spiritually. That through Malchus, through Elikim. So Mesameach Chosan im hakala. The simcha to the chosan happens with and through the kala, because he's with the kala, and that's why it says Eishes Chayla Teres Baila. The woman of valor becomes a crown for her husband. In other words, superior to her husband, because it's as a result of this opposition, as a result of this collision, a result of this encounter and confrontation, that when they both realize that the purpose here is not opposition and the purpose here is not concealment. The purpose here is for each one to reach their ultimate potential. That Shem Havaya will only be revealed in a much deeper way through Shem Elikim. And Shem Elikim is not here to conceal, on the contrary, but rather to bring out the real unity and synchronization that exists in them. So through her, she brings a whole new level of joy to the chosin, and therefore the woman of valor is a crown for her husband.